Thank you. Each year at the Ethical Society, we organize our programs around a theme. Our theme this year is Building an Ethical Future, and in February we are exploring the future of the arts. And to speak to that theme, it is now my pleasure to introduce our interim director, Amy Miller.
I'm not really speaking about the arts. I tried, for what it's worth, I tried to spin it, put it together with the arts. It didn't work very well. Sorry. And also, I was tweaking this until this morning, because it's so important to me to hit all the right notes, and I know we have such a diversity of perspectives here, and I want to give something to everybody, so we'll see how I did. And also, I still feel a little nervous, even though this is now my 4th time doing this. It'll get better. 5 years ago this week, actually, I gave my first talk at the Ethical Society on Valentine's Day weekend on the topic of love as action. You can go back and listen to it if you'd like. I actually fully agree with past Amy on everything she said, so I can endorse the statements. That's not always the case. It seems apropos, since this week is also Valentine's Day, to be thinking again about how we care for ourselves and for each other, both in practical, concrete ways and more nebulous and abstract ways. After all, our founder, Felix Adler, famously said, "Act as so to elicit the best in others and thereby elicit the best in yourselves." I think he would agree that caring for ourselves and others are both crucial tasks. So, by the way, I went to my first caring team meeting last Sunday, and I was struck with the earnestness with which the members here respond to the needs of each other, making sure that people get visitors and cards and thinking carefully about how to best offer support. So if you're new here, the caring team is a group of volunteers who receive requests from members for support of various kinds, and send cards and do all kinds of kind things. And a longtime member lost her husband last weekend as well. And while it was not an unexpected loss, I received no less than a dozen emails or mentions of it, as everyone expressed sincere concern and wanted to make sure that we were taking care of her. That's something to be proud of as a community. You are intentional about the ways in which you care for each other, you show up for each other, and you care a lot and you give a lot. I'm curious, however, if you're applying the same care and concern to yourselves. I'm going to be asking you to raise your hand a few times. You're welcome to participate or not. Self-care is a term that gets thrown around a lot and can mean different things to different people. So how many of you would say you routinely practice self-care? Oh, good job, guys. Well, for me personally, self-care means making sure to exercise regularly, staying hydrated, connecting with friends, taking long hot baths, where hopefully my child and my cat will leave me alone. And I need a lot of alone time. I know we have a lot of introverts in this community. Raise your hand if you identify as an introvert. Makes sense. So you get it. You need a lot of alone time too. And if you're a parent, you also know it's harder and harder to come by when your kids are young. And so the ultimate self-care act for me is when I take time away from everything, either going out of town for a weekend or having a staycation. Like this weekend, I stayed at my friend's fancy house while they were in Vegas seeing Adele. And I ignored everyone. Some of you may have seen me drinking wine and singing in the stairwell on Facebook last night. It was still alone time. Over the years since Zoe was born, I have regularly left town for a couple days or had staycations, at least when it was safe to do so. This is a way for me to care for myself by advocating for it, but it's also important to note that I don't have to try hard because Rodney, who is also here today, fully supports me leaving. I didn't know he was going to be here when I was writing this. He knows how important this is to me since becoming a mom, so encourage me to do what I need to do is a way that he can care for me. And the whole time we've been married, I've received raised eyebrows about it. People always mentioning how nice that Rodney lets you leave town. never fails to aggravate me. He doesn't let me. I'm an autonomous human being, not just a mother and a wife. The assumption that a father isn't able to manage his child for a weekend without the mother is absurd and outdated. Also, he's a much better parent than I am. He is not welcome to go out of town on weekends. And the failure of imagination that a person could want their partner to go off and do what makes them happy, like the fact that people don't think of that as a thing, a way to support your partner, is also frustrating. Because it's the hallmark of a healthy relationship, which we will talk more about on March 19th, which I did loop into the future of health, the future of healthy relationships. When it is equally as important that your partner have their needs met as you have your needs met. So a pro tip is to always make being co-keepers of one another's happiness part of your shared goals. You can't be the sole keeper of their happiness, of course, but you can always support the things they want to do to help them feel how they want to feel. Thinking about your own needs for self-care. What are they? Are you able to ask for the things you need or provide them for yourself? Are you being intentional about caring for yourself? I also didn't know how many of you were good at that before I wrote this, so for those of you who are not, this is for you. This includes taking care of your body and your spirit, but also your energetic space and how much you give of yourself. I know we are a community of givers here, so this might be super relevant to some of you, not so much for others if you don't tend to get too involved, which sometimes introverts don't like to get involved. They like to see what other people are doing. One way to honor yourself is to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. I created a class about healthy boundaries years ago because this was such an issue that came up so often in therapy. Here's some examples of healthy boundaries. You can say no fairly easily. You accept it when others say no to you. You have a strong sense of identity. You expect reciprocity in relationships. You know when the problem is yours and when it belongs to someone else. You share personal information gradually in a mutually sharing and trusting relationship. You don't tolerate abuse or disrespect. You know your own wants, needs, and feelings. You communicate them clearly in your relationships. You are responsible for your own happiness and fulfillment. You allow others to be responsible for their own happiness and fulfillment. You value your opinions and feelings as much as others. You know your limits, and you happily allow others to define their limits. You are able to ask for help when you need it. You don't compromise your values or integrity to avoid rejection. We maintain boundaries around time, energy, and money, among other things. Whether we say yes or no to the requests or demands of the people in our lives. How we choose to be in relationship with others or not. Whether we allow other people to affect our emotional state. Part of establishing boundaries is learning to say no to things that no longer serve us or that we don't want to do. I've learned over many years of working with humans that struggling with any or all of this is very common. Think of boundaries as being about self-care. While it may seem like it, I don't think it is selfish or self-centered to have them. I think they're crucial guideposts in our relationships, and the clearer they are, the more easily the relationships will flow. You teach other people how to treat you, what you'll accept, and even what your values are by how effectively you maintain healthy boundaries. This can include the simple act of learning how to say no. We don't have to create elaborate explanations for why we can't or don't want to do something. In fact, we create disharmony and dishonesty when we do it this way. How many of you have agonized over how to get out of doing something that you didn't want to do and spent a really long time crafting a text or email? Some or much of which might not actually be quite true. I've done that. But last year, my sister likes to plan things, and she likes to make everybody come together, and last year, I didn't want to go to one of the things. And so instead of crafting a long explanation for why, I just said, we won't make it this year, we'll see you next weekend. And she just said, okay. And I was like, whoa. I could have been doing it this way for years. I could have saved myself a lot of time. Because the problem is people start to problem solve for your excuses. So if you say, like, I can't come, I don't have childcare, and then they're like, that's fine, bring the baby, then what? you're better off just telling the truth or just saying, no, we're not going to make it. One common phenomenon I observe that makes saying no to things challenging for people is people-pleasing. How many of you here know that you struggle with people-pleasing? And some of you probably do, and you didn't raise your hand, it's fine. If you're not sure, check in here. Do you perpetually deprioritize your own needs? Scan for approval before making decisions? Believe that so-called selflessness is normal and even ideal? Struggle even to identify your own needs and desires? Over-focus on others' needs and desires? Experience establishing boundaries as a challenge? Fear social or familial retribution or rejection if you were to change your patterns? If some or most of this list resonates with you, here's a practice when you're making decisions. Check in with yourself and ask, who is this decision for? What do I want? What do I not want? The thing is, other people benefit from your willingness to sacrifice yourself for them, so they might have a vested interest in you not changing, especially if they're used to you being the one giving everything. However, what I've seen over and over are people, often women, around midlife who are exhausted by their constant giving to others. Now, being generous of spirit is a wonderful quality, but what often happens is that over time, you may forget that you also have wants, needs, and desires that are frequently unmet. It creates a disharmony within you and can breed resentment towards those you've chosen to care for. It's not fair to you, and honestly, it's not fair to them either. You do have a responsibility to your children and life partners, yes. However, you are not required to cease to exist as an individual human in the service of caring for them. This is especially relevant for many women in hetero marriages with children. It's all too easy for us to be absorbed into the family, to where what mom wants or even who mom is becomes chronically overlooked. There are obviously cases where what is required to adequately care for our families can't be negotiated, where there is no other choice but to proceed beyond reasonable capacity in perpetuity. We care for our ill and aging loved ones and for our children with extraordinary needs. There are people in our community living this reality. Caregiving can cause compassion fatigue, as well as a host of mental and physical health issues for the caregiver. In those cases, a community like ours can be helpful to provide additional support. We should be looking for ways to support the people around us as they care for the ones around them. We do have a responsibility to and for each other as human beings in the human family. So I'm not saying stop giving time or energy to helping other people. That's a big part of what we do here. But balancing your giving against what you actually have capacity for is key. And maybe this is an ethical question, generally speaking. To what extent is it ethical to prioritize ourselves? Do you think it matters whether you have capacity for something if the thing needs to be done? Should you say yes to things you don't want to do if those things benefit other people? These are all questions to wrestle with. I don't necessarily have the answer. I just have my perspective, which is forged through many years of intimate conversations with people who've burnt out because of people-pleasing, lack of boundaries, and giving more than they have. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So I believe that learning to care for yourself is paramount to your happiness and to a return to joyful service to others. Being agreeable and easy to get along with is great if that's congruent with your authentic self. Some people are just really chill. Some people have a ton of energy and love to be in service of others, but that's different than people-pleasing. People-pleasing is a trauma response. It's rooted in the fear of abandonment and rejection. It is a way to barter for love and acceptance through denying your own truth. Now, my more logical people in the room may not struggle with this at all, but my more sensitive, empathetic people probably do. And I think we have a pretty solid mix here. For those more logical people here today, you may ask, how does this happen? Why do some people find it hard to be assertive or just say no? I don't do stuff I don't want to do. I think part of it is probably innate temperament, but part of it is rooted in family of origin stuff. I mean, what isn't? Who hasn't talked about their mother in therapy? Sorry, Mom. I wrote that before I knew she was coming. I haven't talked about you that much. It's fine. You learned... Sorry, let me compose myself. You learn to people please when you value not being a burden more than you value speaking up and asking for your needs to be met. This can happen if you had caregivers who were not consistent in meeting your needs, or if you sensed early on that they liked it better when you were easy and low need. Maybe you had a lot of siblings and it was better for everyone if you just went along with things or were very quiet and didn't cause any trouble. In adulthood, this can look like a tendency to say, oh, it's fine, and I don't care, what do you want to do? Thereby chronically denying your own desires. You may adapt to things way too easily, or maybe you're tough. You can take care of yourself because you assume no one else will take care of you. Maybe you feel uncomfortable asking for help. Maybe you're afraid you won't get it or someone will think you're too much. Being easy to get along with becomes a priority as you become conditioned to believe that disagreeing or having boundaries equates to being difficult. This is especially true for people socialized as girls. People-pleasing is associated with the fawn response, one of the stress responses: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fawning is a way to de-escalate and make sure everybody is happy and okay. But it denies the reality of the situation, which is that something is happening that you don't want. Do you ever find yourself saying okay to things you realize later you'd wish you'd said no to? Remember, no is a complete sentence. It is totally okay to say no to things you don't have the energy for or don't want to do. As it's also okay to say, I need some time before I commit to that, or let me think about it. It's one of the many ways we can care for ourselves, and we can care for each other by responding appropriately when someone gives us a boundary. And again, I do not think it is selfish to have boundaries or know your capacity. It shows other people how to treat you, and it gives them permission to set their own boundaries. We can be more effective with our volunteer efforts, for example, if we align them with what we have energy for. Joyful service means giving that is sourced from a sincere desire to give. It feels better to those who receive it, too. No one wants begrudging or obligatory generosity, and there's a fine line between conscientiousness and obligation. So many people in our community are doers and givers, to the extent that most of the work around here is done by a handful of the most committed volunteers. I'd like us to normalize caring for each other by being mindful of who's doing the most and being willing to take something off someone else's plate when it's clear they are overloaded or overcommitted. I observed someone doing this just last week when an extremely active volunteer offered to take on yet another responsibility. One of the other members in the group said, I don't think you should do more. Let someone else do that. I really appreciated that awareness and willingness to advocate for each other. We all deserve to be looked out for, cared for, and encouraged to rest. So the questions to be asking ourselves regularly: what are you doing to take care of yourself? Even the most basic questions like, are you drinking enough water? Rodney just recently bought the most enormous jug you've ever seen with a handle. It's like 128 ounces or something with like timed, like, you know what I'm talking about? Okay. Because he is chronically dehydrated. I'm like, honey, you have to drink water. So he carries this thing around. So do that if you need to. Are you eating good, healthy, nourishing foods? Are you moving your body? Exercise is crucial, especially as we age. But whatever you do, it doesn't have to be strenuous or something you dread. You just have to move. It's like a present for your body. Are you resting sufficiently? I go to bed at 10 p.m., period. I don't care what's going on. I don't care what kind of fun stuff is happening. I have to go. It's past my bedtime. If I don't, then I'm just miserable the next day. And that's something that I've learned over time. Are you spending time with your friends and loved ones? Are you taking time out to just play or relax or garden or go on a date or listen to live music? I'm going to be playing here on March 6th. Or hike or visit a winery or something like this. Something that isn't necessarily practical, but which nourishes your spirit. Because we cannot sustain a lifestyle that doesn't contain joy and pleasure. Speaking of joy and pleasure, how many of you are huggers? What'd you say? Conditionally? Yeah, fair. I'm a hugger. Sort of. It's new. I thought I was a hugger, and then when I tell people I'm a hugger, they're like, really? So now you know, I'm a hugger. It doesn't seem like too many of you are huggers, though, which I'm pleasantly surprised to see that. I can tell you exactly who has hugged me since I started here and possibly how many times. But maybe we're just out of practice. Maybe we're just out of practice. No, I liked it. I'm just saying it's been like relatively infrequent. That sounded weird. Okay, so maybe we're just out of practice. I'm about to make it even more weird. COVID interrupted normal social patterns of physical touch, and maybe we're just not back in the habit. But do you know the science behind hugging? Research has found that embracing reduces the amount of cortisol, the stress hormone, in our bodies, releasing tension and sending calming messages to the brain. Physical touch and hugging can combat feelings of loneliness that arise as people get older. A retirement home in New York conducted a study in which they implemented a program called Embraceable You. That's cute. The idea was to encourage cross-generational contact and touch between residents and staff members in order to improve the residents' well-being. The results were conclusive, with residents who were touched or hugged 3 times or more a day having more energy, feeling less depressed, better able to concentrate, and having more restful sleep than their less hugged counterparts. It seems to be the prevailing wisdom that hugging for longer periods of time is better for the body. However, I found some conflicting data on exactly how long. Some say 5 seconds or more, but some say 20 seconds is the ticket. Basically, long enough to make it weird. I've started saying that to people. I'm gonna hold you a little longer. It's gonna be weird. I did that just this morning with a friend. Yeah, hi, Elizabeth. I hope you didn't mind. The first time I was a platform host, I didn't realize that there was an image behind me that counted the full minute for mindful breathing, and I brought you all back early because that 45 seconds felt like an hour. I clearly have no concept of seconds or minutes, so I'm gonna use my timer to model the perfect hug. Samantha, if you don't mind. I'm gonna hug her long enough to make it weird. Okay. All right, ready? Do you feel nervous? Me too. I know. Okay, let's hug. I washed it just for you. Okay. It was weird. But her hair smells good. I don't think you have to hug that long. But you can. But, and obviously we want to ask consent before we hug people, especially if you know someone isn't necessarily into hugs. This last week here at the Ethical Society, I had a meeting with some members, and it was kind of a heavy conversation, and so when we came out, I was like, oh, do you want a hug? And one of them said, sure, and one of them said, no, thank you. And then Nancy was standing there. I was like, Nancy, you don't want a hug, do you? And she's like, absolutely not. And then Laura, our membership coordinator, was like in her office in the back, and she heard hugs, and she came running. She's like, I want a hug. So it takes all kinds. Don't hug Nancy. She doesn't like it. Neither does Kit. But if someone is into hugs, it might be a good idea to offer them more often. It benefits you and them. When people hug for some length of time, the feel-good hormone oxytocin is released, which creates a stronger bond and connection between the huggers. Oxytocin has been shown to boost the immune system and reduce stress. Oxytocin is that powerful brain chemical associated with bonding and relationships. Folks also call it the love hormone and the happy hormone. It's what's released during sex, and also when we do skin-to-skin contact with babies, also known as kangaroo care. There's a lot of data to support that kangaroo care is an effective protective factor against postpartum depression in mothers and improves overall health outcomes in babies. When Zoe was first born, I did some research about newborns and crying and attachment. Because back in the day, it was thought that you shouldn't hold babies too much or you would spoil them, which is so messed up given what we now know about attachment. Now we know that you can't spoil a newborn and that babies have no mechanism by which to manipulate you. They cry because they need something. So picking them up when they fuss and holding them for hours, especially against your skin, allows them to trust that their needs will be responded to. It begins to build awareness of safety and connection and hopefully begin to develop secure attachment. I know I joked last time about how boring babies are, which is still true. But I did love that early kangaroo care part that served only the purpose of bonding and developing healthy attachment. This was really important to me, especially since as a social worker, I consistently saw firsthand what attachment wounding looks like in adult relationships. I've seen a lot of different statistics, but the average data suggests that only about 50% of adults have secure attachment. That's probably a platform for a different day. But it speaks to the fact that many of us have historically been starved for touch. Speaking specifically about the amazing powers of touch, did you know that the benefits actually start at the moment of contact? When you hug, cuddle, hold hands, or even touch someone's arm intentionally, the physical pressure stimulates touch receptors, these tiny nerves embedded in your skin all over both of your bodies. A biological chain reaction is triggered when these touch receptors are activated, sending signals from the skin to the brain's reward center. As the signals are interpreted, the brain releases oxytocin, which makes you feel good. So why aren't we hugging each other more? Well, so many reasons, and COVID certainly hasn't helped. Now, as I said before, I am a hugger, but specifically I'm a hugger of hugs initiated and desired by me. I don't enjoy perfunctory or obligatory hugs, or hugs with weird sexual overtones that I don't consent to. But I'm an affectionate person in my way, and I enjoy physical touch, although it's not necessarily my love language. I like holding Zoe and touching her, and sometimes I feel sad that she's getting so much bigger and will be less and less interested in snuggling with me as she gets older. And it's important to note that I always ask consent before hugging, or kissing her. Most of the time she declines, which is okay with me because the goal is to teach her that everyone must receive consent before touching her. Honoring her bodily autonomy is one of the ways I can care for her. There are family members to this day she will not hug, and it hurts their feelings. But I never make her because that is a recipe for that aforementioned people-pleasing stuff, which I'd like her to avoid if possible. So far, she's doing fine. I like sitting on Rodney's lap and having him hold me. Physical touch is his love language, so we always touch when we sit on the couch at night watching our shows. He'll rub my feet or we hold hands. We hug and kiss every day. Zoe gets annoyed and grossed out by how affectionate we are. In fact, she said, what does she say? Am I the first to say, ew? Yes, you are. Everybody else thinks it's cute. But I always tell her how lucky she is, that her parents show how much they like each other. My parents were not affectionate with each other growing up, when I was growing up, and I'm sure that affected me. I'm fine, though. Don't worry. Because I like feeling close to people, and I also know how important touch is to human life, I know that sometimes hugs can be tools of profound healing. It's a way to show care. I also, though, have implicit cultural permission to ask for touch when I need it. Women can hug and be close and intimate with each other in ways men don't always feel free to. When I was a therapist, I wasn't supposed to hug my clients. It's a boundary thing, and mostly I agree and understand why it's a thing. I also think it's rooted in a lot of weird colonial white people stuff that I don't agree with, but that's also another conversation. Towards the end of my tenure as a therapist, I started internally rejecting many things about the rules of therapy that were incongruent with my practice, the type of clients I had, and my own professional judgment. With extreme discretion, I started occasionally hugging clients when I could tell they were in deep distress, and I measured that the value of the touch would be worth that little mini panic I experienced at engaging in a violation of boundaries. That is to say, it was in the best interests of the human before me to step towards them and put my arms around them. Then COVID happened, and I went virtual, and then in-person sessions became possible but distanced. So in the past couple of years, I haven't done much hugging, even though as a coach, I can without feeling like I am doing the wrong thing. Anyway, I saw a male client a couple months ago who I'd been seeing for a while and I felt comfortable with, and he was in distress. He'd been feeling confused and sad about some things in his life. I was leaving for an appointment, so we walked out to the parking lot together, and I offered him a hug. He accepted and immediately began to cry in my arms. Every single time I have hugged a male client, they have cried in my arms. Never once have they taken it in another context, or made it weird, or used it as an opportunity to be inappropriate, or even expected it to ever happen again. So what do I make of this? It makes me really sad. It supports my understanding that many, if not most, men are literally starving for non-sexual nurturing touch, because when they receive it, their bodies react with relief and physical overwhelm. Many, if not most, American men have been starved since birth by a culture that tells them they don't need that. And it's not like men being unable to process emotions and get their basic human needs for touch met is without consequence. As I've said often, if we can heal men, we can save the world from a lot of senseless violence. While, of course, there's a case to be made for individual responsibility for behavior, there's also something to the saying, hurt people hurt people. And my perspective is that people socialized as men are literally wounded by a culture that robs them of their full humanity and their ability to process and express emotion in a healthy way. This is all of our problem, or at least it becomes all of our problem when it results in violence. And the truth is, everybody needs gentle touch. Everyone needs to feel held and loved and supported, especially in times of fear and sadness. I'm not suggesting you all have to start hugging each other, especially those of you who are avowed non-huggers, and especially people you don't feel comfortable hugging. But I am suggesting that we remember the importance, when it is appropriate and welcome, of touching and being touched in non-sexual loving ways. That we remember being vulnerable and human is not only okay, but welcomed and celebrated even. Remember, relearning how to people is our ongoing theme here. It benefits all of us. Connecting with people and being kind to them in all manner of ways makes you feel better anyway. I'm going to skip a little bit because I'm noticing the time. Saying kind things and being appreciative can go a long way to making other people feel cared for, but being the doer and the giver of the kind thing and appreciation also feels good. It may sound like I'm giving contradictory information here, like have boundaries and say no, but also say yes and help people. But it all goes into the big cauldron of creatively caring for people, which provides and requires different things at different times from different people. Using your discernment to guide yourself towards what is right for you. Giving what we can when we want to and have it to give without betraying ourselves in the process. That is where the magic happens, when everybody feels good about whatever is happening. Like when we talked a few weeks ago about the pledge campaign and giving, not because you have to and not beyond your means, but giving generously because you see the value in the community and you want to take responsibility for its well-being. I could go on all day about this, as you can see by the fact that I had to skip 2 pages. But in closing, I'll again quote the founder of ethical culture, Felix Adler. Now, I found this quote after I'd already mostly put this together, but it really tied my thoughts about self-care and caring for others together. He said, "May the humanity that is within every human being be held precious. The vice that underlies all vices is that we are held cheap by others, and far worse, that in our innermost soul we think cheaply of ourselves. So let's think of ourselves and each other as fancy and precious, expensive, valuable, and treat ourselves and each other with the profound care that we deserve." Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That was very good. As the president of the board of trustees here, I've gotten to know Amy pretty well over the last couple months, and I hope that through messages like this, you've gotten to know her well too. And I definitely got a side of Amy here that I hadn't gotten to in board meetings, so good to know. You know, we just don't hug during Zoom board meetings. Our program is running a little long this morning. We understand that parents and caretakers of children need to leave at noon to pick up the children, so don't worry if you need to slip out. The ushers will now take up a collection to support the society. If you are moved to make a donation today, we appreciate anything you may be able to offer. We rely on the generosity of our members and friends to ensure our community can keep providing our many free programs. If you don't have cash with you today, you can donate at ethicalstl.org/donate or at the QR code on the screen now. Or even better, become a pledging member. We are still in our pledge season. If you are interested in joining the Ethical Society, our membership coordinator, Laura, will be available afterwards to answer your questions. And we would love to keep you informed about future events at the Ethical Society. If you would like to join our weekly newsletter, please use the QR code above me to sign up. You can also sign up on the website. And I do not see any other announcements. So now we will have our final musical selection. All three of our performers, Joe, Johanna, and I left it over here. Thank you. Sorry, Dana. I had written it down over there. Dana will be performing Drift and Eventual Lullaby by Kenji Bunch.